What's going on, guys? Hope everyone's having a great day. Today we are installing the first modification on Astro, my 2024 Mustang GT. We're going to be installing Steeda progressive lowering springs on the car today, and I'm super excited because not only is this Astro's first modification, but we're also going to be able to get rid of the excessive wheel gap on the car from the factory. Now, if you want to get an exact measurement, this is about 1 shoe height here, or about 3 string cheeses, or about a 2 to 3 inch gap from the factory. Now, these springs are nothing new. Steeda has had these out on the market for quite a while, and they should work on any 2015 through 2024 Mustang. And specifically why I chose these springs over anything else on the market right now is that these are progressive. So I've never had a progressive spring before, especially on my last S550. Those were like a linear rate. So I'm excited to test this out and see how the handling is with these progressive springs. But with all that being said, let's get the car into the garage, we'll get it up on jack stands, take a look at the suspension, and start the install. Oops, we hit the GoPro. Yikes. I better put this on. So first, we're gonna break all the lugs loose since we're working on the ground here with the breaker bar, and then we'll get the car up in the air. Now that we got the car up in the air here, there's a couple things I just want to point out to you guys for jack points on the new S650. Very similar to the S550, however, I noticed a couple differences, so let me show you under the car. Alright, so at the front driver's side, this is mirrored obviously for the passenger side, but if we go under here, you can kind of see the setup under here. So the jacking point that Ford wants you to use is right here, where my jack stand is placed. The problem is with the jack stand in here, using this as a jacking point, I have no room to place the jack stand. So you say, well, you should have some other slots here to place the jack stand. On my EcoBoost, I'd always place it up here. However, on this generation, they have a metal plate going on the inside of this, and all of this insulation material, the insulation material is even covering the frame of the vehicle and the K-member up here, so it made me a little nervous to place it on any of those. So what I ended up doing was jacking the car up from this place here, in between this bracket and this, opening up here. Jack it up, and then just have enough room for the jack stand to go onto this point here. The rear was super easy. We just jacked it up by the differential there in the back, and then placed the jack stands in the designated jack positions on both sides. So the front is just a little tricky, and I hope that gives you some sort of a view, sorry it's dirty under here, some sort of a view of what to expect when you get under the car. So I didn't want to place the jack stand up here either, because if you avoid this little metal plate, it bends this plastic super far up, and I just wasn't comfortable with that. So we ended up doing it that way. Now I swung over to the passenger side, and this is where I think I'm gonna start. So we got all the wheels off, obviously. I was gonna see if maybe we could do this job in the front without removing the brake caliper. However, unfortunately, the brake caliper is just too big, and you have to remove it, it looks like. So I was hoping that maybe there was a way around that and we could just get access to the 2 bolts holding the shock into the spindle, but it is way too close. So we're gonna have to remove the caliper first, then we're gonna have to remove the rotor, and then we can get access to the 2 bolts holding the strut into the spindle. We're gonna loosen those up, and then we can loosen up the sway bar end link bolt here. We'll pop that out, and then we just got 3 bolts that hold the strut into the top part of the tower up here, and that should be pretty much it. This thing will come out after that. So let me get started at removing the caliper, and we'll go from there. Before I take the caliper off, because this is such a new car and I don't want to damage anything, I'm just going to use an old microfiber towel, kind of wrap the caliper in this, and then I can set it on the K-member here just to have it out of the way, but I don't really want to scratch it up if I can help it, so just a little tip there. Well, as we got going here, I just want to chime in and show you guys this, because this is something that I don't think has really been addressed yet. When removing the caliper here, you know, normally I'll set that caliper on the K-member, at least I did on my S550. However, in this car, there's a bunch of this, like, insulation material. So we don't have enough room. It doesn't fit in there without like crunching that, and it just seemed a little sketchy. So I tried to remove the one clip up here, one little bolt, this little guy from there, and it still is, this is a really kind of tight piece here, and so it doesn't seem to really move. So you could like fold this and bend it, it would probably be okay. However, I'm just supporting the caliper here with a piece of 2x4 microfiber cloth and some little wheel stops underneath there just to get the right length on it. So now this is pretty secure, should be secure for now. Then we can start removing the sway bar end link here and then the 2 bolts that hold on the shock to the spindle. All right, so let's get after the sway bar end link here. Try to buzz this out of here. There we go. I'd have to just push down a little bit. There we go. Wow, and that comes right out. So after buzzing off those bolts here, we're gonna spin them out just to where they're flush with the threads here, because these are actually splined bolts, and so you have to actually hammer these 2 out from this side. So in order to not mess up the threads on the bolt itself, you're gonna put the nut just level here, and then we can hit it with a hammer and drive these out. Now that these bolts are almost removed, we can take our little clip removal tool here and pry out those clips out of the strut assembly itself. Now that those bolts are loose on the bottom, we can go up to the top and we can start loosening up the top 3 bolts here that hold that strut into position. We're just gonna leave the 3rd one just kind of loose here once we're done, and then we can carefully pull that strut out. Leave that one on there like that. Awesome. All right, guys, we got the strut on the bench here, and let me just tell you this, like, this is, like I said, my first brand new car ever, and it is just crazy to me that there's no rust on anything, because normally when I'm working on stuff, there's just tons of rust and bolts are tough to break, things like that, but it's so nice working on a new car. They also left the tag on the spring. I'm like, it's so new that there's still the tag on the spring, which is crazy. Anyways, guys, we're gonna have to start compressing this spring here. So you're gonna need a set of spring compressors with this. We're gonna compress the spring so it relieves tension on the top head here. And then we're gonna be able to buzz this nut off on the top, remove the old spring, and install the new one. All right, one of them is down. It's always a little sketchy doing that. I don't know why. It's always a little scary doing that, but with spring compressor, I mean, you should be safe enough. Just be careful. Real quick, as a comparison between the stock front spring and the Steeda progressive spring here, you can see it is substantially shorter, obviously. And yeah, should make it a lot easier going in with compressing this one versus the stock one. Now you probably don't have to do this, but it is recommended to cut one of these little sections off here so it gives you more clearance on this bump stop, because we are lowering the car. We just want to make sure that it's not nailing this every single time you hit a decent bump. So to get more clearance, we'll just cut one of these off. There we go, one done. For the spring, make sure the writing is facing the top, like so it's readable when you install it. So we're gonna put that over the top here. New spring is installed, so now it's time to put it back on the car and go to the other side. So I'm not gonna take you around for the opposite side, the driver's side, because it's gonna be the same process, but we'll pick up on the rear of the vehicle once I have this back installed. All right guys, now that we have the bigger bolts here in place and those nuts snugged up, now we're gonna torque them to spec. It's 185 foot-pounds of torque is what you're gonna wanna do on these. So let's get those torqued down. Perfect, that's done. Then for the sway bar end length, we wanna tighten that down to 76 foot-pounds of torque. Make sure that is secure, one click at a time. There we go. Rotor on. Now the caliper to the spindle torque is about 85 foot-pounds, so I'm gonna try to get that now, and then we'll tighten up the top ones. Then this side is done. On the top of the car, these get torqued down to 46 foot-pounds of torque, so let's do that now. All right guys, the fronts are completely done. Now it's time to move on to the rear of the car. And honestly, this should be easier. All right, so we're gonna remove these two bolts here for the upper shock mount. Then we're gonna pull this sensor out of its little holder here. And then we're gonna remove this bracket as well, just to free up this entire area. And then I'll show you underneath the car where we're gonna remove the lower shock mounts, or shock mounting bolts. And then we'll move on to the subframe. That's pretty easy, we can just pull that out. All right, top is done, let's head to the bottom. All right guys, so I'm kicking myself a little bit for not lifting this car higher into the air. However, I think we should still be able to get at these bolts. Let's take a look, see if that's possible. Probably not, and it's a different size socket, perfect. Now we have to support the subframe of the car before we start loosening the subframe bolts here. I'm not sure if you can see really where I went here, but that's where I am supporting the subframe, right on that pad. So I'm gonna line that up just a bit better here, and then we'll get to work. Then we have these two little 13s that gotta come out. Then we got the 21mm here. This one's the big one. And then it's just that beast here on the back side, and then the subframe should lower down and we should be able to get that spring out. Now if we've done everything correctly here, we should be able to lower the subframe down with the jack that's placed under the car. So let's give that a shot. That looked like it worked, so let's see if we can get that spring out. Now you may have noticed that we went from light to dark. This took me way longer than I expected, and I actually had to use my jack handle to get enough pressure on the subframe to get the springs installed. But after some persuasion, it was time for the reveal. Well guys, the spring install is completely finished and the car is looking much better. This has definitely taken away quite a bit of that wheel gap that you get from the factory. Don't mind that it's a completely different day here. The sun is shining here the next day. It took me a little bit longer than I'd like to admit, but I wanted to be extra careful with the new car. But guys, this is what it looks like. It is looking pretty decent for, you know, the factory wheels still being on here. It definitely lowered the car at least an inch in the front, probably a little over that. I know Steeda says it'll be like 1.12 or something like that. 1.2 in the front, 1 in the rear. And the rear is looking much better as well. Now, if you were to keep the factory wheels on here, I think what would really look good is like a 25mm spacer front and rear, just to push the wheels out just a little bit. You can see they're still recessed there. So that would be kind of a nice addition if, say, you didn't have a ton of money at the time here and you want to keep these factory wheels on here. Pick up some 25mm spacers, and I think that would really make this look a whole lot better. Just really take it to the next level. And I'm super excited to actually take it for a drive. I just limped it across the street to this parking lot here to do this video for you in the sun so you guys can actually see it. But now we're on to the fun part here, guys. The next video, we're gonna be installing my 20-inch RTR Tech 7 wheels on the car and completely changing the look here. I got to get an alignment after that, and then we'll really see what the springs and the 20-inch RTR wheels do to this car. I think it's going to completely transform the handling characteristics, and I'm excited to share that with you. So you guys, if you enjoyed the video, I appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more on this car and more progression on the build. And if you like the video, hit that little like button there. That just helps the video reach more people and helps that YouTube algorithm. So you guys have a great day. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.